Hello. Hello, hello, hello. I can't imagine anyone is here yet. Oh, I'm just eating some pad thai. There's a really good place up the road that make pad thai. I'll give you like a big thing of it for $20. I usually make some rice. I make some rice and then lay the pad thai on top of it and eat that way. So you get like twice as many bowls of dinner because you got all that rice in there, and it also tastes better because I like the coconut milk over rice. It's pretty tasty. So moral of the story, I eat pad thai. If anyone's here, just throw a message in the chat box there, just so I can get an idea of who is here. So tonight we're gonna talk a little bit about A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. We decided as a group we were gonna read the first 46 pages, I believe it was. I was up to chapter 9, and we're just gonna kind of shoot the shit a bit and talk about it and see what we can learn from it as aspiring writers. I will be just 2 seconds while I blow my nose. So, sorry, I was gonna get a couple. It looks very clean through the webcam display, but my desk is actually a total mess right now. Excuse me. How's the vocals here? Because the last time, some people were having issues hearing my voice, and I'm just wondering if I'm coming through clear, loud enough, or if it's actually a little bit too loud. Because on my software here, it just looks like it's blowing out the speakers. But for some reason, when it comes through YouTube, it seems to be quite a bit quieter. So I don't know what that's about. Yeah, we'll just give people a couple minutes to show up. Maybe I'll put a message quickly in the group that we are now live. Excuse me. Did everyone get to read it, or are people just kind of showing up here to see what other people thought? Or maybe you've already read it before, I don't know. I haven't read this book, and it's probably been about 18 months since I last read it, so it's nice to read it again and get my head back in the space. It is one of my favorite books of all time. I can't write and talk at the same time. It was a beautiful day here today. It was something like, I don't know, like around 20 degrees probably, and just not a cloud in the sky. It was awesome. Went for a nice long drive. I opened up all the windows in my apartment. I just did a bunch of cleaning, and got to sit down for a bit, cup of coffee, read the last few pages of the book, Farewell. So, pretty nice day for me. Is anyone here? Anyone here from the Writing Around group? I mean, I'd rather not start talking until other people are here. Just because I don't want to, kick things off. It's a little dark in here. I'm going to turn a light on. That's a bit better. Ooh. If anyone's watching right now and is just planning to kind of listen along as we discuss the book as a group, I mean, we're gonna talk about a few things that, I mean, I didn't really plan a structure to this really. I'm kind of winging this. So, but I mean, there were some things that I noticed while I read that I want to talk about as a group. I definitely want to discuss the first interaction between Mr. Henry and Catherine Barclay, because this is more than anything a romance novel, and as a group we've had quite a few discussions actually about how to handle the first moment between two characters in like a love relationship if you're going to go that route with your genre. And Hemingway goes about that in an interesting way in this book that I think you want to like be aware of and learn from. Not necessarily want to do it the same way, but you want to start to teach your brain how to recognize the way authors are going about these first moment interaction love relationships between characters. Because I mean, the more you know, the more you can put into your own writing and be more successful. I also want to talk about characters, what different characters are doing in the story. Already there's a very clear division between themes. Themes are really important in this book, and even though we're not even 50 pages in, I think a lot of the themes are already very clear. So I'd like to talk about that a bit, and we can talk about the writing style a bit. I've said many times that I'm a big fan of his writing style. I like the way whenever I read his writing, it always feels like the way like an IBM computer would write a book. Like, it's so literal and just careful. I don't even know how to. It's very. I don't want to say it's boring writing, but it's very it's very literal. I guess it says exactly what it wants to say at all times. Whereas a lot of other authors, I tend to veer more into the range of flowery or metaphorical writing. Like they put a lot of oomph into paragraphs and the structure of ideas to make it as interesting as possible while you read it. But Hemingway kind of said, fuck that. I'm gonna just say what it is and put my chips down on characters and plot. And I think he's won the bet, as it were. So all things I'd like to talk about. But no one is here. No one is here. Just check the group here real quick. I think it's today. Today's Sunday. Yeah, today's Sunday. Has anybody ever read this book before that's sitting in the chat? Pretty quiet. All right. Well, then maybe what I can do is I can just start talking. It's better with back and forth, but maybe people have the wrong time. Anyway, let's start with the first chapter. It's harder to appreciate the first chapter until you've read the book. But the first chapter is a narration, quite a lot of description. It kind of talks about where they live and about the troops marching by the house and the dust rising and falling on the trees around, and talks a little bit about illness. At the last paragraph, at the start of the winter came the permanent rain, and with the rain came the cholera, but it was checked, and in the end only 7,000 of it died in the army. Maybe this is jumping the gun a little bit, but this first chapter is actually, it tells the entire plot of the novel. That's the purpose of it. And I think these types of first chapters are really powerful, not necessarily just in the way of letting an author flex a little bit, their literary skills, but I think it also helps to set tone for a book. A first chapter is very, very important. I'm not sure that today a first chapter like this would really do very well, just because modern writing seems so much more geared towards plot and excitement, whereas older this is, I want to say it's from the 20s. Let me just double check that. I think maybe it was the 30s. Oh yeah, 29. Okay, so writing was a little bit different back then, but what I'm getting at is that it's a little bit bland in comparison to today's writing, but there's still things that you can learn from it. And I think even if you decide to do a first chapter in your own novel where you sort of do a plot outline through the narrative of the first chapter, if you can keep it interesting enough to, go to toe with modern writing, not only are you going to get a leg up as far as, like I said, setting the tone for your novel, but it also helps a writer understand their novel. Oh, hi, Bernadine. Yeah, 29. Yeah, 1929. Bernadine, how'd you make out with the reading? I just kind of dove into things a little bit here. I was talking a little bit about the first chapter. I don't know how much you heard of what I was saying, but just to summarize, the first chapter is it's a plot overview of the book, written, I think it's about a page and a half, maybe even, yeah, about a page and a half. Just sort of setting the tone for the book, the outline of the plot, in a very sort of hidden kind of way. But that'll be more appropriate to talk about probably once we finish the book as a group. Just because there's things in there that if you haven't read the book before, it's not going to make any sense. How did you make out with the reading, Bernadine? What did you think of the story? The first, it would have been the first 46 pages. I read the first 9 chapters. Oh, so you actually might have gone a little bit ahead. So you're sitting at chapter, like you're ready to go chapter 10? Chapter 9 is actually a pretty good chapter. It's quite a lot that happens. Okay. So you actually read a little bit more than I did. Just fine. It's not a big deal. What did you think of I was briefly mentioning this before. Finding interesting, yes, chapter 9 changed things for me. Faster paced. Yeah. A lot happens in chapter 9. It really feels like the book starts to pick up in chapter 9. You get a better idea of like where things are really headed, whereas before that there's a lot. It's all pretty much just build up for that. It is a really important chapter because that's sort of like the butterfly effect throughout the rest of the book. Let's talk about Catherine Barclay a little bit. So she's first mentioned by the protagonist's friend, Ronaldo. I think it was Ronaldo. Let me just double check. It's Rin something. I forget his name sometimes. Rinaldi. Shit. Okay, so Rinaldi. So Rinaldi first mentions Catherine Barclay, that he wants to marry her. And this is the first time as a reader we've had any mention of this character. So that's how we're introduced to her. And then the two of them go to visit the nurses, the English nurses. And then it kind of winds up being the protagonist, Henry, who talks to her, and then they kind of hit it off. What did you think of that moment? Well, let me say this. What did you think of them meeting the first time that they did, and sort of like the build-up with Rinaldi, and then obviously continuing forward, she becomes infatuated with Henry instead of Rinaldi, who was expecting to marry her. It's kind of interesting. The reason I find it interesting is just because, like we were talking before as a group a couple times about romance novels, setting up, that first moment of interaction between two lovers, or at least the two characters that the romance novel is going to kind of follow. So, build up to the moment, and then the execution of the moment, and then sort of how it proceeds forward is all really, really important. Because that's like the only time that you're really going to create an original plot. Every romance novel, you're expecting two characters to meet and become infatuated with one another, but the way in which they meet, the way in which they become infatuated is where, as a writer, you need to, really think about creating your own story, your own narrative, keeping it original, so that people, they fall in love with your book. Rinaldi seemed okay with giving her up so quickly. Yeah, I've always kind of wondered about that. I don't know if it's like a minor tragedy in the book that he didn't get the girl that he loved. But I don't know if it also has to do with the fact like he loves Henry so much that he just doesn't even really care. I'm not really sure. But it is weird that because he's talking about they're gonna get married, and then they kind of walk away. I don't think he's as okay with it as it seems in the writing. I mean, who would be? This guy shows up from vacation essentially, and he's talking with this girl he wants to marry, and then his friend just goes and just starts talking to her, hitting on her, and she just becomes infatuated with him. I mean, anyone's gonna be kind of pissed off about that deep down. I think, if I'm being honest, it never really describes how upset Rinaldi is about it, but I think deep down it impacts him pretty hard, and that, again, sort of butterfly effect runs through the novel. But it is an interesting thing to notice, Bernardine, that how okay he is with losing Catherine Barclay so quickly. But let's talk about... maybe Rinaldi isn't really that romantic. He asked Henry if he should marry Miss Barclay before Henry had ever met her to give an option. I kind of feel like that is more of like a 1929 thing, like where it's so old-fashioned. I mean, back in those days, you couldn't even rent a hotel room with a woman unless sometimes they would make you show documentation that you're married. Like... things like that were very, very uptight. So I think that him wanting to marry her and talking about it like that is just more of a cultural thing. I'm not sure people really had like girlfriends a whole lot, or at least it wasn't the way it is today. I think I could be wrong, but that's just sort of the tone, because like in the book as they go on, like they don't speak romantically in front of anyone. Henry and Catherine Barclay. Everything they do is hidden, and he wants to, he wants to have sex the whole time that he's with her, and but there's nowhere for them to go, other than he can go to the whorehouse, but so I just think that it's part to do with the time period, but it's also to do with introducing the character. So there is like a literary device going on here, where we're being introduced to the idea of Catherine Barclay as the proposal, like the lover of his best friend, and then very, very, very quickly she is infatuated with Henry, and that's how we come to know her. I think more than anything, it's a way for Hemingway to introduce the character, sort of dulling down that moment of them first meeting, because when you have a character run into another character and you want them to fall in love, if it happens really, really quickly, it feels kind of unbelievable. And I think that the way Hemingway did it here, where he's introducing the character to us earlier than them actually meeting, it helps to make it more believable, in my opinion. And it's interesting to think of her in that certain way as being the proposed lover to Rinaldi, and then it very quickly winding up to have nothing to do with that. Bit of a twist, I guess. What else did you think? What about when they were sitting on the bench and he wants to kiss her and she slaps him? What did you think of that? So Bernadine says, so far I'm getting the impression that Henry is an impressive man. Everyone seems interested in his life. Yeah, Hemingway always kind of writes his protagonists that way. Very manly men. Just kind of knows everyone. Everybody's happy to see him. I think it has a lot to do with how Hemingway lived his life. I think he was kind of a manly man, and he was the guy who kind of knew everyone and talked to everyone. And so probably more to do with the author, but it also gives him creative liberty to have many, many different discussions with varied characters to build on his story. So two sides to that, I would say. But I do want to talk about that slap on the bench. So, okay, the reason I find it interesting is the way that Henry reacts to it. He describes it like a chess game. About having like the upper hand and attack. It's all very what's the word I'm looking for? Militarized. It feels very much like someone who is thinking like a lieutenant in the army. And I think that's Hemingway trying to explain that in the army, with all this going on, I mean, he's an American in the Italian army. He's trapped there. He can't leave. He's stuck with the Italians. And it's warped his mind. He eats, sleeps, and thinks like a soldier. And the parts of him that are, still human, like sex, it's just a transaction. And he's very depressed about it. I mean, the guy's crazy depressed. Sorry, so Bernadine said, I thought she slapped him quickly and that not much detail is given on what he was doing other than going in too soon for the kiss. Did she ask if he loved her then? Or maybe that came later. Let me just quickly check here. I think it was after she said she loved him. Shit, where was it? I should have put bookmarks. Oh, here it is. Okay. I leaned forward in the dark to kiss her, and there was a sharp, stinging flash. She had slapped my face hard. Her hand had hit my nose and eyes, and tears came in my eyes from the reflex. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I felt I had a certain advantage. You were quite right." "I'm dreadfully sorry," she said. "I just couldn't stand the nurse's evening off aspect of it. I didn't mean to hurt you. I did hurt you, didn't I?" She was looking at me in the dark. I was angry and yet certain, seeing it all ahead like the moves in a chess game. "You did exactly right," I said. "I don't mind at all. Poor man, blah, 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 blah." And it just goes from there. So that is a really important moment in the book as far as the way that Hemingway has chosen to describe things. And that's why I talk about similes so much when we do our critique sessions, bending your similes towards your themes. And war is the biggest theme in this book. I mean, this book is all about war. It's a love story, but everything that happens in this book is very much with purpose in regards to building up his themes. Like, I think of literature a little bit like a debate, and the author is fighting their side of the argument, and they're trying to, put in so much as much ammunition as they can to sell their point and win the argument, as it were. And I know what argument he's making in this book, but I don't want to spoil it for people that haven't read it yet. But he has an argument to make, and he is trying to sell it in this book, and that's why he would write a moment like that the way he did. Bernardine, that's interesting too, because I didn't think of him as depressed, although of course who would be happy during war? He'd gone away during winter and then returned like kids would return to school. He had a break from it all, then is thrown back into it and then goes back really quickly. Yeah, I mean, let's ignore, we'll ignore chapter 9 for now, just because I didn't read it. I only read up till chapter 9. Ow! So I'm not as refreshed on it as I normally would be. But let's just, I mean, if you talk about Henry as a character, I mean, there's quite a long description at one point about him sleeping in the whorehouses. And it's kind of confusing. And he even admits in the description that it's kind of confusing. And he basically says, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I can't explain it to you. Okay, next time we do this, I'm putting bookmarks in the book. But he's talking a lot about, so when he went away on vacation, he told the priest that he would go visit his father, who's this famous hunter. And he lives in the little town where it's very, very, it's winter there, it's very cold, it's very dry. He describes the roads as being frozen as hard as iron. And they're all peasants that live there, and they greet the travelers as lords coming through their town. And the priest sends a letter to his father preparing him to receive Henry on his vacation, but Henry never goes. Henry just sort of tours around Europe drinking and fucking. That's all he ends up doing. And he just comes back. And he doesn't really have a story to tell anyone about what he did. Rinaldi is asking him about things, but he doesn't really have a whole lot to say. And it's because he's depressed. He's just totally lost in this war. And that's what Hemingway wrote about a lot. It's what he wrote about in his other novel, The Sun Also Rises. That was his first novel. This is his second novel. He talks about the lost generation, which is the generation that grew up during the First World War, that they devoted themselves to the war, and then once the war was over, they didn't know who the hell they were. Because that's all their life was. They were just soldiers. And then the war ended, they come back home, and they just, what do I do now? All they did was drink. They were all alcoholics. Probably a lot of it's PTSD. Probably a lot of mental health issues going on there that they just didn't really acknowledge during the 30s or the early 20s, mid-20s. What was I trying to say? So he's very, very depressed, and he's just, he's just obsessed with war. His role as the lieutenant in the army. And then he meets the girl. And that's where, I mean, even up until this point, probably, okay, so I read 8 chapters. I'm on chapter 9. Until probably chapter 8 or chapter 7 maybe, even though he's sort of, seeing Catherine Barclay, there's no real, I don't know, maybe chemistry between them. Because he even admits that he's just sort of playing the game. Which again, like he's always describing it like a chess game. I think very much Hemingway is relating this to war and the way that minds work maybe during wartime. Maybe that's what just men were like. Or soldiers in general. That doesn't have to be just men, but soldiers in the war. If you're working in the war long enough, then it probably starts to consume your mind, and you see the rest of life as a sort of chess game, or move after move, looking for advantages. He might be talking about that, but all I can say for certain is that the war is a big theme in the novel, and it's taken over Henry's mind. And it isn't until he spends probably like 3 or 4 times, like visits with Catherine, before he kind of starts to get attached to her. He seems very much like he's just trying to have sex with her, and he really doesn't care about her. And then it isn't until he can't see her one night because she's sick that he starts to realize that he actually did want to see her. So I'll be honest, like I don't really have a structure prepared to this discussion about the book. I don't know if there's anything that you guys want to talk about. I've read this book many times, but I probably have a bit of tunnel vision. I sort of look for the same things every time I read the book, and sometimes I'll find like new instances of what I'm looking for, but there might be things that you guys picked up on that I didn't pick up on. But I do think it's important to pay close attention to the book, because Hemingway doesn't do anything without reason. His writing is so rich with purpose. And you'll see that because there'll be moments where he'll be writing. Well, there's one particular moment that he's talking about something, and then in the next paragraph, it's not even a chapter break. He's just talking about how Henry's in a different place altogether, having a different conversation. Like if he's taking time to talk about something, it clearly has a big purpose to what he's trying to tell you in the book, because he doesn't waste time with anything. That's why I think it's a really great book to learn from as a writer. What do you think? Bernadine, do you remember when the nurse told him not to bring too many Italians with him when he comes to visit Miss Barclay? Yes, I do remember that moment. Talking about the accents, I think. Oh, yeah, I see, yeah. Not even for the beautiful language, no, nor for the beautiful uniforms. Good evening, I said. Yeah. Are you going to talk about the Italian salute? And why did he join the Italian army? He says he joined the Italian army because he spoke Italian. And he just happened to be there when things kicked off. This is a very much like a wrong place at the wrong time scenario. No, I'll tell you right now. He never goes into more description, really, why he's there. He does talk a little bit about family later in the book. He doesn't talk to his family. He doesn't care for them, and Catherine Barclay doesn't care for her family either. I feel like that has more to do with Hemingway as a person. Also, kind of creating that feeling between the characters that they have no one in the world but each other. But I guess Hemingway had a pretty fucked up relationship with his family. His mother used to dress him up like a girl as a kid because she wanted a girl or a daughter. So he's definitely got issues with family. He almost never writes about family in his novels. He never talks about his parents. Trying to think, even in A Farewell, or sorry, yeah, he just never really talks about family, and if he does, it's always like little momentary mentions about them, that relationships aren't great, or he doesn't really talk to them very often, things like that. Bernardine, the Italian salute was funny that he couldn't do it with credibility. Yeah, I've looked it up before why it is with the Italian salute that he says that. I don't know what the Italian salute looks like. Let's see if we can find it. That looks American. I'm not sure. I've looked it up before, and I know I had trouble finding what he was talking about before. Well, there's one here. Oh, see, he's even talking Farewell to Arms. How did the Italian salute? It doesn't really give a clear explanation. Anyway, Ernest Hemingway spent his summers in Michigan, where I am. I'm not sure you talk about Bernadine. Oh, you're saying literally. You're saying he spent his summers in Michigan, that's where you are. Okay. I thought you were referencing something in a text. Spent his summers in Michigan. I didn't know that. I'm not sure what he'd been doing. He led quite a life. I mean, he fought in, I think it was 2 or 3 wars he was in. I think he did, the ambulance work every time. That's real. That's actually from his life, that he did serve in the army. He got hurt while driving the ambulances, and he had his leg injured. That is true. It's not quite to the extent of this book. Well, actually, I don't know. I guess I don't know how badly he was hurt in real life. But it sounds like, from what I understand, he made basically a full recovery from it. He didn't have issues with his leg throughout his life. So let me see here. This book always makes me feel so weird when I read it. Kind of depressed in a weird, sort of dreamy way. I don't know how to explain it. I just read it so many times. It always makes me feel weird when I read it now. But it's kind of enjoyable. 22 summers spent in Michigan at Walloon Lake. Is anyone else from the Wording Around group here? Is Fung on her call? She wanted to be here for this. I don't know. Fung, are you here? Let me just check the El Grupo. You wouldn't believe how much spam people try to post into our group. Every day I have to decline requests to post stuff to the group. I just now something about translating your writing to German. It's a bunch of fucking bullshit. It's so annoying. I mean, there's almost 400 people in the group now. Probably like 20 of those people are just like not even people. They're just like bots. What else did you think, Bernadine? Approaching this as a writer, I mean, was there anything from the text that you felt that you learned that you might apply to your own writing? How did you feel about, the rhythm of the writing? How did you feel about his use of language? Easy Cooking with Aisha. Hi, I'm from the group. Hi, Aisha. Did you happen to read? I kind of made a mistake. I didn't post about reading the book. We was just sort of in a conversation we had in the last critique session that we decided we were going to meet up and do this. Bernadine says she found he used a lot of shorter sentences and repetition. Yeah. There's a real science to the way he writes. He does write with a lot of short sentences, but I like to think he's got a nice variation. I just think that a lot of the time you don't need long sentences. And a lot of the time it's better to have a couple quick jabby sentences. It helps. We also had one very long run sentence with several ands, but it didn't feel long. Yeah, well, he's very good with grammar. I mean, he knows. I wish I knew what sentence you're talking about, but he also has a way of writing the way he thinks. I think is what he's doing, because this book very much like there's sometimes there's a back and forth with the way he writes the narrative in this book. So it'll say like, I hope that doesn't happen, and the next sentence like, but it might happen, and the next sentence like, no, it won't happen. Like it jumps back and forth the way that we might think about something, have a nasty thought, and sort of correct ourselves, or be fearful of something and then correct ourselves. There's a whole lot of there's a lot in this book that is intentionally replicating the way a person's mind works, or at least how his mind worked. Chapter 3, it was warm like the spring, and I walked down the alleyway. Let me just take a peek here. It was warm and like the spring, and I walked down the alleyway of trees, warmed from the sun on the wall, and found we still lived in that same house, and that it all looked the same as when I had left it. Honestly, that's not too bad from him. I wish I had that part where he talks about the women. I think he's talking to the priest when he has that conversation. Maybe I don't know where it is. Anyway, I just think it's a really important moment for that character. Shit, I'm so disorganized for this. But yeah, he's really good with grammar. His writing background, sort of before fiction, was journalism. I think I've talked about this before. So he's approaching creative prose writing as someone who was writing, for a journalistic newspaper before. And if you ever have taken any time to read a newspaper like a writer, to examine it as it is, you'll notice that they all have a very specific style of writing. There's really no personality to the writing. It's just fact. And it's so obvious that he's writing his fiction in that same journalistic tone. And that's why I say that his writing always feels like something an IBM computer would spit out. If you asked a computer to write a story, I feel like a computer story would sound like Ernest Hemingway, because it's just factual information. And that's why Hemingway always talks about, the one true sentence. And that's how he approached every sentence he ever wrote, was to write the truest sentence he knew. I personally think that's why he was so successful as, a literary genius. Because if you write the truth, patterns are going to emerge. And that's what really defines literary writing, in my opinion. Some people will say it's themes, and I agree that themes are really important when you talk about literature. But I think patterns are what really give it its definition. And those patterns are often found in the themes. And that's why I talk about things like his discussion with Catherine Barclay when she slaps him in the face, and he describes it like a chess game. Bernadine, who would you say would be close to Hemingway's writing today? Actually, you just answered it, a computer. Anyone today like him, in your opinion? Well, the thing is, almost everyone is a little bit like Ernest Hemingway nowadays. And that's why Hemingway won the Nobel Prize. He's almost like the grandfather of modern writing. So Hemingway was very close friends with Fitzgerald, who wrote The Great Gatsby. And if you've ever read The Great Gatsby, it's a good book, but it is so fucking dense. And it's written the way that you would expect a book from the 20s to be written. It's so far up its own ass. It's a very human story, but the way in which things are written, it's just so overly complicated. And that's why Hemingway, I like him so much, because so like I was saying, Hemingway and Fitzgerald are best friends. They're very much writing friends. I'm pretty sure they used to compare their penis sizes. Like, I'm not even making that up. So Fitzgerald wrote The Great Gatsby, and Hemingway got jealous because they were calling his novel The Great American Novel, and he said, fuck that, I can do better. And he wrote The Sun Also Rises. And if you compare the writing styles between those two books, it's absolutely night and day. And you would say that Hemingway's writing so drastically sort of represents what modern writing today is like. It's a very literal take on writing. I don't know how you would really describe modern writing. I mean, every writer has their own style. Maybe it was the more minimalistic approach to writing. because that's what Hemingway's style really is. He's a minimalist writer. He never says more than he needs to, and that's why critics or academics who talk about Hemingway's writing will, often comment on how rich his writing was, because he could put so much meaning into so few words that resonate through the entire book. Again, that's why I say this whole like a chess game, this woman slapping him in the face. And I could sit here and talk for 20 minutes about that one line and how it relates to the book and why it's so important. He didn't have to say anything more than that. He could have dragged that out for a whole page because he knows it's an important moment. It's an enormously important moment. But he doesn't do that. The guy was a genius. To answer your question, Bernadine, probably maybe I don't really know. I don't really know who writes like Hemingway. No one's gonna write exactly like him, but I guess it depends on what you consider writing like Hemingway. I mean, is it the minimalist approach to the prose? Is it his type of vocabulary? Is it that simple sort of approach to writing? For sale, baby shoes never worn. Yeah, yeah. I think he was trying to write the shortest short story ever. Again, I'm pretty sure that was like a bet that somebody said you can't write a short story shorter than this, and then Hemingway said, "Fuck that, I can do it," and he wrote that. It's a pretty fucked up story. For sale, baby shoes never worn. Yeah. Isha says, yes, Hemingway's style is simple, sparse, and journalistic. Hemingway is a master of the declarative subject, verb, object sentence. I have read this novel when I was doing my master's. Hemingway is a master of the declarative subject, verb, object sentence. Would you be able to expand on that a bit? What's the subject, verb, object sentence? I've never heard that term before. And maybe we could find an example of it in the text here. What did you do your master's in, too? John ran to town. I don't know. I've never heard the subject, verb, object sentence. I've never heard that term before. Isn't that subject, verb, object? I'm honestly not sure. I'm not sure what way she's talking about. Okay, I just looked it up. In linguistic typology, subject, verb, object is a sentence structure where the subject comes first, the verb second, and the object 3rd. This is a simple sentence structure of English. I've just never heard it talked about in prose before. SVO. Hi, Fong. John ran to town fits, doesn't it? I think so. My my formal training in grammatical terminology is pretty limited, and I keep meaning to kind of teach myself it online through some kind of resource. What chapter are we at? So we've all read up to chapter 9. So 8 chapters read, ready to go. Chapter 9. Although Bernadine did read chapter 9 as well. Did you happen to read any? I read the first 9 chapters. Okay. Okay, so we're all basically on the same page. Yeah, I think there's since the daylight change, there's been some issues with timing because I've been putting Atlantic Daylight Time (ADT), although before we were using Atlantic Standard Time, and the standard time is still 1 hour ahead, whereas my time went back an hour for daylight savings. So maybe what I need to do is just start saying 8 o'clock Atlantic Standard. I don't know. I'm gonna have to figure something out with the timing because it seems like every week someone is confused with the timing, although there never seem to be any misunderstandings before the daylight time change. So anyway, Bernadine, what did you think, Funk? Yeah, what did you think of the writing? We've been talking a little bit about Hemingway's style. We're talking a little bit about the themes in the book, the relationships between some of the characters. It's all pretty relaxed. Is Philip here by any chance? He says, nowadays I'm studying pedagogical. I don't even know how to pronounce that word. Something grammar. That's why my focus is on grammar. Yeah, I need to invest some time really better understanding grammar. At least being able to like identify different parts of a sentence. Funk says, I've appreciated Hemingway's art. This is the second book. He has an old style. He is very creatively written in a particular language, so each character, their particular native sounds or foreign sounds. Yeah, how do I even put this? Well, he always said that he wanted to write books that sounded real. And I remember reading something about him receiving a letter from his mother. This by this point, like he's pretty successful, he's pretty famous, and his mother's asking him, you know, why do you have to write these books that say bitch and damn and shit and bitch and all these swear words? He's like, she thinks he's just writing these filthy books, and he's arguing with her, saying that like no, like I'm just trying to write a book that sounds how people would actually speak to one another. And I think sometimes the dialogue in his stories, they drift a little bit. Not so much in the short stories, but definitely in the novels. I know I've said earlier that everything he writes is with purpose, and I still stand by that. Specifically in like the narrative portions. But dialogue between characters, I think he did just sort of let the characters talk to one another as they would in real life, and it drifts around a little bit left to right sort of thing. But he he was very keen on letting the writing sound natural and real, and maybe that's why he wrote, you know, the sort of first person approach that he did with this book. So, like I was saying earlier, the narrative in the book between dialogue sections is it very much sounds like somebody's thinking to themselves, which is how it's supposed to sound. Huh. Yeah, I never heard of that type of grammar before. It's interesting though. I'm wondering if there might be some videos on YouTube or something that sort of just breaks down grammar. I feel like a lot of grammar, like I know, sort of, but I don't know the specific terms. If you gave me a test on it, I would probably fail. But I wanna get better at that. I wanna look into this SVO a little bit, because that's interesting. Will we be going chapter by chapter? We haven't really, honestly, we haven't really done that. We're just sort of talking more about the book as a whole up to this point. Unfortunately, Fong, you did miss quite a bit of the discussion. Um, where the hell is English? Okay, so English isn't here. Whatever. I'll have to invest some time into that later. The back cover of my copy says he rewrote the ending 39 times to get the words right. My edition collects all of the alternate endings along with the early drafts of other essential. Really? I knew he wrote the ending like, yeah, 39. I didn't know it was 39 exactly. I thought it was around 30. 30 times before he got it right. Wow, I didn't know that you could get that. Shit. Okay, when we finish the book, Bernadine, you should tell us a little bit about those alternative endings. I've always wondered if the alternate endings were like the same plot ideas, just written a little bit differently, or if it was 39 completely different endings. Because the ending is very important. Yeah, don't jump ahead. You don't want to ruin the ending. But it'll be really interesting to see. And as writers for us, it's interesting to know, you know, what didn't make the mark. It'd be cool to kind of see what Hemingway might have found, you know, was weaker or stronger comparing the two versions. Well, 30, I guess 40 versions of the ending. I can't imagine it has all 39 variations. Aisha says, I got a pedagogical. Is that pedagogic? Okay. Petty something grammar is a teaching grammar, how you are going to teach grammar to your students. So is it like an approach to grammar specifically through the eyes of a teacher? Is that kind of what it is? Yeah, Fung. I'll make sure the video is uploaded I'll trim out some of the beginning, and you can have a look at what we said. But if I was going to just quickly summarize what we've talked about, let me think here. We talked about, big thing I talked about was themes. So talking about, the way they've been talking about war and sex so far in the book. Very, very important. Definitely the way that the army has treated the priest. So the priest represents something very special in this book, very sacred. And it's just sort of how the army you could almost view these people as like a mini society, because they're out there, they're on the front, which means that they're right on the border between the two armies, just ready to go at a moment's notice. And obviously the priest is what a priest is. I mean, it represents religion, spirituality, holiness, the goodness of people. And he's just totally outnumbered by these army rats that are just poking fun at him, humiliating him the whole time. And Hemingway's clearly saying something about the destruction of goodness by war, right? He's sort of setting up those pillars of meaning that will resonate through the entire book. But it's a very important image to notice this priest literally fighting, or more so just sort of letting it happen, but with these other army military individuals, he doesn't stand a chance. And I think it's a very literal take on the idea that in war, all the goodness, all the love, the holiness, spirituality in life is just going to get zapped. It's gone. The other thing I talked about was the moment that Henry meets with Catherine Barclay. I was talking about, because in a few of the other critique sessions I've talked about was about the dynamic of romance in a romance novel between two characters who are going to fall in love, and how the author approaches it. I think it's very important to notice that when Hemingway is bringing these two characters together, first off, it's all about war. All they talk about is war, which is important. And when he tries to kiss her and she slaps him and he talks about it being like a game of chess, he's thinking of it like through military strategy. So again, as writers, we need to notice what Hemingway is doing, how he is approaching these, not so much these subjects, but maybe we'll say like the structure of a romance novel through war, or through a book that's set in a wartime and talking about war. And we talked a little bit about Hemingway's style of writing. I think you were here for that. And I'm trying to think about what else. Priest doesn't argue back with the bully, but it seems he's trying to keep Henry from getting corrupted / being like the others. Yeah, he does. I mean, him and the priest are friends. I always kind of imagine it like in those cartoons where you have one character and you've got like the halo, like the angel on one side and the devil on the other side when they're trying to figure something out. It feels a little bit like that when he's sitting at these tables with these people, where the priest is saying, the things, the good stuff that, probably is how we should think, as opposed to the military individuals who are, it's just let's just drink and fuck. That's all it is. Hemingway's style changes too when it reflects his characters' changing states of mind. It does, actually. And I wish I could find that fucking passage I was talking about. I don't know where it is, but it's talking about, at one point where he's talking to the priest and he gets drunk. And he's talking about having sex with the whores and just sort of what it's always like in the night versus the day. And I swear that sentence is like half a page long. It's really, really long sentence. It's stream of consciousness writing is what it is. It's a really powerful way to write, especially in a book like this where, I mean, Aisha's absolutely correct. And we mentioned before that Hemingway's style typically is very punctual. It's very, how would you describe it? it's everything's very much like a matter of fact. It just, this is what it is what it is, and there's not a whole lot of room in his way of thinking for argument, I guess, or I don't know, maybe there's not much flexibility there in the idea. It just is. He says things, and that's just it is. But when he gets drunk, the writing changes, and he's not so sure of everything, and he talks about being depressed and how miserable his life is, and just sort of he's very, very depressed, and it really only seems to come out when he's drinking. And I think that's something we can all relate to, if anyone's ever been depressed before, and drank. You know, when you're sober and you're keeping yourself busy, it's easy to kind of push it away. But if you've ever been in that position where then, one night you go out and you're drinking with people, and you even just have like 10 seconds to yourself, and your mind just starts to whirl, and you just have those kind of shitty thoughts. I think that's really what Hemingway's trying to replicate in the narratives when he gets drunk and he starts to have these sort of unsettling passages about life and how miserable he is, and how even pointless the sex is. It feels very very primitive or animalistic, maybe, I don't know. I think the scene you're looking for is on page 1112. Let me see. Priest page, priest not with girls. Page 7. No. I think that's when they were making fun of him for masturbating. Every night, priest 5 against 1. I'm pretty sure that's a masturbation joke. Oh, it's page 13. Okay, so he's talking to the priest, and the priest is kind of upset that he didn't go visit his father, and they're sitting in the mess hall with the other soldiers. And he says, "We two were talking while the others argued." Again, there, notice the contrast. "I had wanted to go to Abruzzi. I had gone to no place where the roads were frozen and hard as iron, where it was clear, cold, and dry, and the snow was dry and powdery, and hair tracks in the snow, and the peasants took off their hats and called you lord, and there was good hunting. I had gone to no such place but to the smoke of cafes, and nights when the room whirled, and you needed to look at the wall to make it stop, nights in bed, drunk, when you knew that that was all there was, and the strange excitement of waking and not knowing who it was with you, and the world all unreal in the dark, so exciting that you must resume again, unknowing and not caring in the night, sure that this was all and all and all and not caring. Suddenly to care very much, and to sleep, to wake with it sometimes morning, and all that had been there gone, and with it sometimes there gone, and everything sharp and hard and clear, and sometimes a dispute about the cost. Sometimes still pleasant and fond and warm, and breakfast and lunch. Sometimes all niceness gone, and glad to get out on the street, but always another day, starting, and then another night. I tried to tell about the night, and the difference between the night and the day, and how the night was better, unless the day was very clean and cold, and I could not tell it, as I cannot tell it now. But if you have had it, you know. He had not had it, but he understood that I had really wanted to go to Abruzzi, but had not gone, and we were still friends, blah, blah, blah. There's just such a contrast in the way that passage is written. Bear in mind, he's pretty fucking drunk in this part in the book. Just long drawn out sentences that just sort of go around in circles. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It makes sense, but there's very much this feeling of trying to describe something that has no name. and you're just sort of circling around the idea, hoping that there's enough there to sell it or to explain it, but not really being sure. I don't know if he's talking about loneliness or... I don't know. I don't really know what he's trying to talk about there. It feels like something that's very personal to Hemingway, and he's just vomiting on the page a little bit. For future, my book must have larger print. My page 11 is your page 13. Oh. That's a good point, Bernadine. Yeah, we'll have to go off of chapters, not necessarily just pages, because there might be different... I didn't get the all and all and all. It's not written in your book? Because that's definitely in mine. Aisha, yes, it's stream of consciousness. Yeah, it's exactly what it is. But I'm just saying that, I mean, I would say, what am I trying to say? I'm just saying that there's a pretty big contrast between not so much the meaning of the text, but the way that the protagonist is thinking about things, where, you know, the majority of the book, everything is just, it's very punctual, it's very certain of itself. It feels very much like the way a lieutenant in the army might think, right? There's no room for error in the army. But then he gets drunk, and then that human side of him comes out. And actually, a pretty interesting line that I didn't even really notice until I just read it out loud to you. But we two were talking while the others argued. So him and the priest talking while the army argued. Pretty interesting way of describing things. Again, very, very literal, but you know, arguing is just another word for fighting. But talking has a very peaceful connotation to it. And a lot of the time, it does feel like the priest for Henry is almost an escape from the army, an escape from reality. They never really talk about, I mean, they don't have a whole lot in common. All Henry wants to do is drink and fuck, and the priest doesn't do any of that. Bernadine, I wrote this earlier. Priest doesn't argue back with the bully, but it seems he's trying to keep Henry from getting corrupted, being like the others. Yeah. Well, they're friends, right? And in a way, Henry's the only ally the priest really has. He's the only one that really talks to the priest without sarcasm. Oh, no, it's in it. I just didn't quite get what he meant. It reminds me of that, what is it? A rose is a rose is a rose. Let me just quickly look that up. I just want to, because he was... Gertrude Stein. Gertrude Stein was actually a bit of a mentor for Ernest Hemingway. They knew each other quite well, and I think she kind of trained him as a writer. So when he says all is all, like it's definitely got something to do with Gertrude Stein. It's funny though. They actually grew to kind of hate each other, because as Hemingway's success amplified, Gertrude Stein just never really reached the height that Hemingway did. Obviously, I mean, it's Ernest Hemingway. He's probably the second most famous writer next to Shakespeare. And he was later quoted as saying something, a bitch is a bitch is a bitch, insulting her. So it got pretty bad between the two of them. But I feel like there's something that he's he's saying about Gertrude Stein, or at least the sentiment of what she meant by a rose is a rose is a rose. And often interpreted as meaning things are what they are. And that's all. And that's what he's trying to say. Like, this is all it is. It's all is all is all. This is all it is. Just amplifying that statement. But it also kind of fits the tone of that drunk, sort of, rolling around language. Stream of consciousness, as Aisha said. Yeah. Was there anything else people want to talk about? I mean, we don't have to sit here and talk for 2 and 3 hours like we do with the critiques. This was just sort of more to have fun and chill out, talk a little bit about the book, and maybe I'll have a chat with Philip, because he did mention that he has like a Discord server, which is basically like a chat room where people can talk to one another, privately, obviously. So I don't know. It might be more fun to do this, talking at least about the novel as a group in a chat room, so we can all just talk instead of everyone just listening to me talk. It's just I don't mind sitting here and talking about the critiques. I usually have enough to say, but reading this book as a group isn't about me teaching you guys things, right? Like, it's just about us as all of us aspiring writers just learning together. I'm very familiar with this book, so there might be some things that I can point towards, but realistically, I mean, I'm not some university professor, right? I have no right to sit here and talk down to people. So I don't want it to feel like that. I just want it to be fun for all of us to hang out and sharing one another's opinion on the book and stuff. Aisha says, you are doing a great job. Well, thank you, Aisha. That's nice. I'm not saying I'm doing a bad job. It's just I don't like the feeling that I'm talking down to people. It's really, I know sometimes it probably comes off that way. It's not what I'm trying to do. I just I don't know. But it's certainly not intentional. I mean, if you talk about my training as a writer, I mean, I'm a university dropout. I did 3 years of university before I realized that I really just didn't want to do it anymore, and I left. So, I don't know. Anyway, so maybe we'll talk about next time doing like a Discord server or something, so we can all sit around with our microphones and just kind of talk about it, have a drink or something. What was there anything else that people wanted to talk about? Anything else they found interesting in the book that they want to discuss, or anything at all? I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick. This is Fong speaking. I found in this book so far the characters are not connected. They are just there but haven't found a deep understanding of each other. What makes you say that? Just thinking. Well, I mean, Rinaldi is like his very close friend. I mean, he calls him baby. It's pretty. I mean, it's a very romanticized, you know, way of addressing someone. I've always felt that Hemingway chose that just to very quickly explain that they're very, very close. And by now, he's very quickly falling in love with Catherine Barclay. I mean, he's got his brother in arms in the military, and his that sort of pure side of him that's still in him that sort of relates to the priest. There are signs of strong opinions of particular topics, but nothing so substantial yet apart from the growing relationship with Frederick and Catherine. Is that how you guys are feeling it? Are you saying that there's no like developing relationships? Like you don't see things progressing? Because if that's what you're talking about, I can totally understand why you feel that way. And I think that's just part of Hemingway's approach to writing. His books all kind of feel that way. But that's why I was saying earlier, Bernadine, sometimes I'm not sure who was talking when all the men are engaged in dialogue. To be honest, I think that's on purpose. Aisha says, I am really enjoying the session, though it's 4:30 a.m. there. Oh my goodness. That is really early. I hope you didn't stay up all night to do this. Bernadine, Sundays are harder for me, but want to be here. I'll probably need to sign off at around 75 minutes. Wow. Sometimes I'm not sure who's... Okay, yes, that's correct. Yeah, Fong. So, what I was saying earlier before you got here, I was talking about literature and how literature is sort of built upon, like a debate, an argument, and the author's just trying to sell their point. And that's what Hemingway does with his book. Every interaction is there to tell you something about what war is and what it means to him as the author, and maybe more what it meant to the world at the time, and the characters that are there to represent the world is really what's going on. I haven't verified this myself. I tried to verify it once, but I couldn't find anything on it. But someone once told me that every character in the book, A Farewell to Arms, represents one of the countries in the world during World War I. So, but I mean, it sounds like something he would do. I can't say for certain because I was never able to find anything online to verify that, and I don't know enough about the countries of the world to be able to relate it, to figure it out for myself. But that's what he's doing, and that's why they're having these conversations. But you are right. It's not modernized writing where everything is just about plot, A to B to C to D to E, and so forth. Hemingway isn't afraid to sort of dally around a little bit and talk to people. It's all about sort of building that setting. Funk. So I got confused with the conversation, whether that's supposed to be sarcastic. Okay, I'm not sure what you mean. Sounds good, Bernadine. Thanks for coming. Here, actually, just before you go, maybe we'll just say... So, okay, read up to chapter 16. So don't read chapter 16. Just read all of chapter 15 and be ready to go with chapter 16 by next Sunday. Does that sound good to everyone? For me, that's just another 50 pages. Here, whether or not Bernadine sees that, I'll post it to the group. Can you? I'm sorry, Fung. I'm not sure what you're talking about. So I got confused with the conversation whether that's supposed to be sarcastic. Aisha says it's an emotional story without flowery description. Yeah, absolutely. He's so confident in what's going on that he doesn't need to amplify things with it's I wish I had the right words to describe exactly what I'm trying to say. Read my Rinaldi conversation. Oh, not page 15, chapter 15, Fong. Um, yeah, no, he's brilliant. He's a brilliant writer, Aisha. He knows how to toy with the mind, I guess. He knows. I mean, through trial and error, obviously, he writes the ending of the book 39 times to get it right, but he, goddamn, he's a good writer. Would have been a really interesting person to have met, had a conversation with about writing. Anything else, guys? Oh, here. So describe, interpret what their relationship is like. Okay, yeah. If you're talking about the sarcasm between him and Rinaldi, it is very sarcastic. They're very good friends, and I mean, speaking as a man, with my friends who are men, you know, if we're very close, we'll talk like that to one another. We'll make fun of each other and be kind of rude sometimes, but it's all out of love, right? It's not out of a mean spirit to hurt somebody's feelings. And actually later on into the book, there's a couple times where they argue the way they usually did, but somebody crosses the line and then they say like, hey, like let's not talk about that, and they're very serious about it, and the other one backs off. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like hurt your feelings. But yeah, so if you're trying to understand the relationship, Frederick and Rinaldi are very, very good friends. And they rip on each other sometimes. They give each other a hard time. They're making fun of each other the way men do, but it's all out of love. Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else that you thought? Like, is there anything that you found in the text to help you as a writer that you think that other people should know, be aware of in the text, that they can learn from it? Or maybe, did you like it? Are you enjoying the book? Is it boring you? I know in modern, like in 2021, most people who would read this book today would probably get bored of it very, very quickly. And I totally get why. I don't even know why I really liked it as much as I did when I was younger. But I just did. I'm a big fan of dialogue. I love reading dialogue, even if it's kind of like pointless. I would rather read a book just completely full of dialogue than read like a bunch of descriptions and narratives and all this and that. Like, I just don't really care. Well, if nobody else has anything to say, maybe we'll wrap this up. We're going to read all the way through. We're going to read up to chapter 15, read chapter 15, and be ready to start chapter 16, not this week, but next week. We'll meet again at the same time next Sunday. We'll meet next Sunday, 7 o'clock, same as this weekend. Fuang says, war books can be so boring, and this was a mix of love and war intertwined, almost a metaphor to each other. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what he's trying to do with this book. That's the love story between Frederick and Catherine, from sliding into melodrama or sentimentality. Everything is presented so plainly, realistically to the reader. Yeah. It's very believable. That's why I fucking hate romance stories or movies because they're so friggin' exaggerated, and there's nothing there that is how things really happen in life. It's just, yeah, it's just unbelievable. And I appreciate, like, if I have to read a love story, then I'd rather it be based in reality, it be believable, than just something that's just totally insane. I don't care for that stuff. But if it's well done, you know, I can stomach it. Anything else? And then maybe we'll wrap this up and meet again next week. Okay. All right. So, yep, we'll wrap this up. I'll put a post in the group about the time and the amount of reading people are going to do for next Sunday, but I think everyone here right now is on the same page. So, thanks again so much for coming here, guys, sharing your opinion, reading. You're welcome, Fwang. It's totally my pleasure. So, yeah, we'll talk again next week. I'll put a few things up in the group. If you have any questions, you can message me. You can email, whatever works for you. But until then, I hope everybody has a great week, and keep writing. Oh, and just one last thing. If you have any writing that you want the group to critique, send it to the writingaroundfb@gmail.com, because right now, I think there's only 2 stories that are there to critique, and they're from the same writers that we critiqued the last 2 sessions. Like, they just sent it in because there's nothing else to critique. Fung, we haven't looked at your writing in quite a while. Aisha, I don't think we've ever looked at your writing. So you feel more than welcome to send that in if you'd like the group to critique some of your creative writing. All right, guys. Have a great night, and I will talk to you soon.